We've all seen the movie The Matrix. It was interesting and fun on the big screen of the TV, but has it become a bit too real in your own life? Are you seeing glitches in the Matrix and trying to figure out what's happening? Have you been told that you've been tricked and that you need to fight against what they've done to you? The deception. Whether you're just beginning to notice, or if you've been searching for a more peaceful and congruent way to live without battling them, you're in the right place. I'm Ken, and I'll be joined by Eliza and Rena Stella. Let's explore together on the Liberty Ark. To the Liberty Ark Podcast, we're on number 24. I'm Ken, and I'm here with Eliza and Rena Stella. Rena Stella, how you doing?
Hey Ken, doing good. How are you doing?
Really good. How about you, Eliza?
Doing awesome.
Good.
It's always so fun to be here.
Good. Yeah, this should be a fun one tonight. It's going to be fairly rapid, I think, unless we get mouthy. So we'll see how which we usually do. We'll see how things flow here. So, Eliza, you want to read through this? Well, I guess I could just mention that we're going through a book called The Great International Heist by Rebecca and Jonathan Rodriguez, and we'll develop some concepts and talk about them.
That's good. Episode 24. Wow. Everything must be bankrupt. During the early 1900s, the United States faced severe financial troubles that led to a declaration of national bankruptcy. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's executive proclamations 2039 and 2040 in 1933 further solidified the crisis by placing the nation under a sort of invisible military occupation to restructure its banking system. These measures were crucial in establishing new emergency banking procedures and war powers. The administration of the United States bankruptcy was overseen by the executive branch, which assumed control over the municipal government, directing it toward policies centered on managing the bankruptcy. Key legislative acts such as the Emergency Banking Relief Act of March 9, 1933, and House Joint Resolution 192, HJR 192, played pivotal roles in this transformation. The unfortunate truth that many recoil from upon hearing it is that the living men and women of this realm tacitly agree to be bonded sureties to a bankrupt franchise through their own ignorant yet voluntary actions. We say ignorantly based upon two maxims of law. Ignorance of law does not excuse, and to be bound to know or to be able to know is the same as to know. This emphasizes that in legal contexts, the responsibility to know or the capability to acquire knowledge is treated equivalently to actually having that knowledge. All of the legal codes and statutes are written and placed into the public record, available in public libraries, law libraries, and on the internet to anyone willing to put forth the effort to know.
We're going to go through several different concepts today, and we'll probably look at things from several different angles because there's a lot of ways of interpreting some of this, and you kind of have to understand the flow of changes in the monetary situation or the financial situation of the U.S. during these years. So early 1900s, 1913 was when the Federal Reserve was established. Right? Am I thinking right? And that's the same year, or I think the next year, that income tax came in. And then we had the Roaring 20s, where the stock markets were going crazy. And then 1929 hit, and everybody's heard of that. So became substantial economic difficulties for the U.S., and that's where we run into this 1933 situation where Franklin Roosevelt came in, and that's kind of where we'll start, is on that beginning.
Now, Ken and Eliza, would you guys be able to help me understand before we get into what occurred, 100 years ago? Bankruptcy, to me, bankruptcy, the way I know that specific word is more of on an individual basis. Like when we lose control of our finances, it gives us, we can do a legal process to get a fresh start per se. That's how I understand it, but I don't think we're talking about the same bankruptcy here on what we're going to discuss tonight. And I think it would be nice to clarify that for someone like myself, to really capture what we're going to say throughout this conversation.
It hit me when I was trying to also interpret bankrupt like it does to say, people as individuals. But the other, the synonym for bankruptcy is to place into administration. That's one of them. This was placed into a different kind of administration with different kinds of powers, almost like sleight of hand. And I think if we interpret that to be bankrupt as reorganizing to administer in a different way to benefit different parties, perhaps maybe that's how we look at it.
Yeah, a lot of times I hear people talking about this, and they don't make it clear that we're not talking about exactly the same kind of bankruptcy like an individual. But even with individual bankruptcy, you've got different types, right? One of which is reorganization. So one is where everything's wiped out. Another one is you're given the ability to reorganize things and pay debts off over a different time frame. And in that situation, there's an actual bankruptcy court. There's a judge. It's a formal proceeding that's available and visible in the public, and documentation for it and so forth. When the U.S., with what we're talking about here as a sovereign country, I seriously doubt that happens in that way. As I'm not aware of any bankruptcy court for handling sovereign bankruptcies. But reorganizations are things that have happened numerous times where the incomplete way the financial system is put together has been changed, and what the backing for the currency has been changed. And I think most people that are listening much today have heard a lot about what's being termed the Great Reset or different wordings like that, and are aware that there's something going on now that's kind of close to a reorganization.
So for example, we're going to talk about the bankruptcy in the early 1900s. And I know that it is a very important, I guess the national bankruptcy that occurred then is very important for us to know about and understand. You hear a lot of bankruptcy taking place, nations' bankruptcy taking place in other years as well. People just throw it out there, right? There's no backup or proof or anything. But why is the national bankruptcy in the early 1900s? Why is it so important? Because you're hearing about it today, 100 years later, which is the reset that you probably just mentioned there, Ken. But why is the 1900s, why is that so important to us today?
Even though the Fed got established in 13, and so currency was issued, as opposed to, we weren't bartering gold and silver back and forth for each other. We were using currency. But that currency was literally physically backed by gold held by the government, right? And it was reimbursable. I mean, you could go to the bank and trade in your paper dollars for gold and silver at a specific exchange rate. Right? As of 33, the banks were closed down. I'm going to go to the next page because that's where it talks about it. In March 9, 1933 is when Franklin Roosevelt closed down the banks. They had what he called a banking holiday. Nice way to say it, right? Where the banks were shut down, and this lasted through until about June, I think. The gold was all stolen. It was taken by the government. And people were paid like $22.67 or $20.67 an ounce or something like that but they had to turn in their gold. Now back then, people had gold for the most part. And most of the time they had it in bank safe deposit boxes. They had it registered because they didn't want to just have that much gold in their houses and stuff to where it could be stolen. So there was registrations of it. So Roosevelt actually legislated to where there was up to a $10,000 fine and a certain amount of time in prison or something like that if they found that you didn't turn in your gold. Now, to even think about that happening in the United States just sounds completely loony, doesn't it? I mean, that you've got private property and the government's coming in and telling you have to give it to us and this is what we're going to give you for it. So we're going to pay you, but we're only going to pay you this. And that was in March. And then in January, the government increased the value of the exchange rate for gold. So they bought it from you for a cheap price under force. Right? And then they immediately changed the theoretic value of it once they had it. That doesn't seem terribly fair to me. But it was.
What's interesting. Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, please.
Well, it was presented in such a way, just like wars are generally presented, right? It's your duty, your patriotic duty to do this. And so most people, my understanding is the majority of people didn't create any problem with it at all because they really felt they were doing something useful. I mean, you just gotten out of World War I and were we to World War II yet or not? I don't even know my dates that well.
No, not yet.
Yeah. So World War I was over with at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And things were kind of shaky worldwide, right? And they'd just gotten out of the 1929 situation. So trying to pull back out of it. So there was a lot of unrest and uncertainty. So people were able to be talked into by the government doing things that they might not otherwise have done.
But a lot of it was sleight of hand as well, because what was asked was for everyone that had registered their gold. The wealthy had private vaulting. Most of the wealthy did not turn it in. And then we get back to what we discussed in previous podcasts. What does it mean to register? Register is transferring legal title. Okay, you have actually given, there was every right for those to whom you had transferred title to say, okay, now we need the stuff, because it wasn't your stuff, it was their stuff by title. The equitable side, we've talked about trusts. The equitable side was still held by you, but the legal title had been registered and transferred. And that's what people had done when they had gone to register it and put it in safe deposit boxes, and then the confiscation came. So again, it's more sleight of hand and more awareness that we generally don't have as a populace. First, number one, we trust, and number two, we look at, okay, register your laptop or whatever. There are benefits for that. Registering the gold with the bank, someone will keep it safe for you, etc. But you really they had already transferred the title at the time. Kind of like makes you sick to your stomach, but that's what happened also.
Especially when you realize the same situation today. So all your financial assets that are registered in bank accounts or whatever, they have the legal title to it.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So it blows my mind that, when the nation goes bankrupt, right? They are purposely doing this to reset or apply new systems or get their hands into the economy and make it, I guess, flow the way they want it. I'm thinking they need always collateral to continue operating. So it blows my mind that in that period of time, the collateral in a way was gold backing the dollar, but then intentionally they request it or ask people to turn it in, right? And then they stop backing the dollar. They no longer back the dollar with gold. So is that just sounds like it was intentionally done, right? To replace it with the backing of something else. And what was that something else?
But you think about it and what was happened. Yeah. What they had done was, right, transferred all of this and everyone that turned it in. And a lot of people turned it in not realizing registered, unregistered. It was just, as Ken said, patriotic duty or fear. But it was for the registered product being transferred to the legal owner. You had registered it with the banks, transferred to the banks, not to the U.S. And now there's bankruptcy. What we need to back the currency with something else. And what is that something else? And it turns out to be the people, the hard work, etc. Taxation of the people is the new backing. And that was the flip. That's what happened on, as Ken mentioned, this holiday.
Yeah, they always do things in kind of a rolling process, So it's a slow creep with little blurbs along the way on that slow creep, but for the purpose of getting to a point. So even the gold situation was a slow creep. There were several different things that occurred, and it goes back really even to like in the 1880s, I think, is when silver was taken out of the backing of the of currency. Right? I mean, there were still coins being made by the Treasury, but we used to have a bimetal backing. Bimetal being two, silver and gold. Silver got taken out of that in the 1880s. Gold got taken back at 1933. But then in 1944, you've probably heard of Bretton Woods, and that's when things moved to what's sometimes referred to as the gold exchange standard, where you hear that the U.S. the U.S. dollar is the world reserve currency. That's what happened. It became a global agreement that everything would be based on the U.S. dollar. Even though, and the U.S. dollar would theoretically have backing of gold, but it's not really validated to be real, right? And you can't exchange it. Internationally, you could still at that point
between countries.
Yeah, other countries could turn in their dollars and get gold, but individuals couldn't. And then the next step was when Nixon in 1971 actually shut the whole thing down and said, even internationally, you can't. And so what are we backing by? So then they had to require, through an agreement with Saudi Arabia, to only sell oil in U.S. dollars. So that pretty much the whole world needs energy, right? Energy is the basis of everything. So the gold now was not the important thing anymore. Oil was. And oil is what caused the U.S. dollar to be needed by every country. So the value comes because everybody needs to use it. And the U.S., although we don't have to validate that we have anything valuable to support it, we have a tax base of people that the rest of the world relied on. And we have a military, which is a large part of that. And that's why we have bases all throughout the world in virtually every country. Nobody else does that. We're the only one that does that.
Use our system, so you had the backing, we have the people, the taxability of the people backing the currency itself. We had reason for the world to use this, basically coercion, okay, being the petrodollar. If you needed energy, you have to go through that. And as that faded and energy became more readily available through a lot of countries, then they put in place a global exchange system, a SWIFT system, that in order to access global exchange between currencies, you had to go through an exchange first to dollars and then into the other currency. So now you have this force-fed system. It was coercion, still is, but now that's fading away because there are alternative methods to now have global trade, global exchange. So you look at this cascade of how do we keep the dollar from being gold-backed all the way into how do we keep this as a reserve currency. And that's a big issue still today, and it's evolving.
Yeah, because I always wondered when I did learn that, of course, it was no longer backed by gold. It was definitely very, I guess, powerful, right? To have it be backed by gold. How people to this day still look at the dollar as like they want it, right? They want the dollar. Yet it's lost a lot of its purchasing power, today. I wondered, but with the explanation you guys just gave, the petrodollar and everybody needs energy and this and that totally makes sense as to why people continued to want that dollar or dollars in their possession.
Another reason is that it's the only currency, paper currency, that has, well, it's mostly digital, that has never been replaced. That is a huge reason. It doesn't matter if it's the British pound or any other country. No other country has continued to back the exchangeability of their currency since its inception to day one.
Or to change the number of zeros. For example, when I was
devalue it.
Yeah, when I was in Indonesia, they went through that change of changing where the little dot goes along the zeros.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes all the old paper valueless. It's a completely different system now. So
old
now
paper, or just other currencies. Is that what you mean? Like old paper or other currencies?
Their paper currency. Right?
They devalued it and
that
made
force. But it makes the old pieces of paper that you got sitting around at home absolutely valueless. So it forces you to turn all your money in and get reissued the new currency. So again, it's another method for the government to have control over what you have.
And that's exactly what I was speaking to, that the U.S. dollar is the only one who has never replaced their currency, even with their own of a different denomination. So that's why that is a big reason that other countries hold as a safety measure, as a reserve, they will hold dollars because they know that they'll always be good. Now, if something happens that changes, it doesn't mean that through inflation they haven't basically lost value, but the currencies themselves have never done like what Ken delineated. They've never actually gone in and purposefully devalued or replaced their currency. So they're holding on, and now, I mean, we can go into a lot of other subjects such as stable coins and other things that the U.S. is trying to do to hold their spot as the reserve currency. But the fact that the currency once held still has value still remains, and that's a strong point.
Yeah. Now, what's really interesting to me is the dollar, the physical paper dollar, is a debt note. Now, this took me a very long time to capture. I mean, I've got to admit, it's just very recent that I've actually begun to really log into my brain what this really means. That piece of paper is simply just an IOU. That's all it is, because there's nothing supporting it. Right? The Fed creates dollars and says, here's the value of the dollar, and puts it out into the system. Right? And we recognize that as worth $1, as if it is $1 that has a value. And it doesn't. It's simply owed to you. It really is just an IOU. That's all it is. So you don't have an asset in your hand that's worth something. You have a promise to someday pay you that. And that's what we're all trading around back and forth, is IOUs. With
So
no
should we be
literal
excited? So should we be excited as we're accumulating dollars?
If something doesn't happen and the government can't make good on it, right? Because that can happen, and that has happened many times over the years in virtually every country that's ever been the reserve currency.
Yeah, so the mindset of like, should we, because it's debt notes, like, do we really want to have accumulative debt notes in our hands, in our possession?
Well, that's the thing. We all think that we have an asset in our hands. We have a valuable thing in our hands, but we don't. We have a piece of paper that's a liability to somebody else. It's a debt owed by somebody else, and it's a debt due to us. You know, different people have different levels of comfort with that.
Yep.
And in banking terms, debt on their books, a debt owed, is actually an asset to them because it's something that is forthcoming to them. But anymore, what we are talking about with the dollar, we're talking about basically it's a recognized system of exchange that you can go and get stuff. So what is really encouraged is, with today's climate, is you're better off anchoring that currency, like exchanging it for some valuable stuff, right? Than holding it. But you still need it for the medium of exchange in order to operate in commerce, which will always exist. We need something that is, what I want to say, just fluid. What is the word I'm looking for? We have something that is liquid, fluid. We need something that is liquid, because if we say we go buy stuff, we'd have to go and exchange that stuff back into dollars in order to, say we bought chickens with it. Not the neighbor next door doesn't want chickens to mow his yard. He wants dollars, right?
So really the stuff that we should be exchanging it for, to clarify, is that stuff should be something, an asset that will be of value in the future versus accumulative, something that possibly may lose the value completely, which would be that paper, the debt note, the piece of paper.
Yeah, because it's just like any debt. If my neighbor owes me something, but they leave and move to Mexico next week and choose not to pay me back, that piece of paper, that IOU from them that I have, is of no value whatsoever. So debt notes are worth something if they're collectible. And so far, U.S. debt notes have been collectible, but that doesn't mean they always will. And in the meantime, prices keep going up. So it takes more of those debt notes to pay for a thing than it took yesterday to pay for that same thing.
And is it because they're issuing more and more of those debt notes and watering down the currency, so therefore things get more expensive? That the stuff itself isn't becoming more valuable. It's that the currency itself is getting watered down to be worth less.
And then going back to our slide here, the Executive Proclamations 2039 and 2040 from that 1933 year, in general, is that what breaks down what we just spoke about for the last few minutes?
Yeah, this is what started us in this direction, and took the gold backing support, began to take the gold backing support away from the dollar, and basically started creating a military infrastructure that we created in order to support the world to rely on us.
That was a, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, now, I mean, we've had currencies that were major currencies that have gone belly up. We've never had a true world reserve currency where the entire world based all their currencies on our currency, one currency. So if this one goes belly up, this is a whole different situation than has ever occurred in history. So
It would be a global impact, is what you're saying.
that's exactly right. Way
Because
more
I've always wondered, why are all nations in debt? Like all of them. It's not just us, right? It's not just the
They
U.S.
followed the U.S.
Who do they all owe it to? You know,
Yeah.
Exactly. They owe it to each other. Like what? Like that's another subject. I'm sure we can spend a lot of time on that.
That would be really interesting to go in depth on and see if everybody, because if I owe you $1,000 and you owe me $1,500, isn't it really just a net that you owe me $500?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, if all these countries owe each other all this money, do they really owe all that money, or could they just net it out and two countries have to pay something?
Shell game and what is money?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
But you said something important there, Ken. I think you both brought up this point of what this slide is doing, is that we have this invisible military occupation. It was this switch from having the currency backed by gold, but under this invisible military occupation, it's basically, and a lot of it we didn't realize it's voluntary, but it's that occupation of making the people basically enslaved to back the currency instead of gold. How do you do that? And this is probably one of the biggest sleights of hand that I think we've ever seen, but it continues to be a process because they're not done here.
Yeah, because either an asset or violence has to support stuff.
The other amazing or astonishing part of this whole story here is how in either a 4 or 5 day period, right? They close the banks, they call this emergency, they declare this emergency. How in 4 or 5 days do they make all of these moves, right? And it's just, I find it astonishing.
How did they come up with the Patriot Act so quickly? Right?
It's been in the works in the past, right?
There you go. It's 100 years of planning.
Yeah, it was set up, written, ready in order to enact the emergency.
Yeah.
Like they flipped out in those 4 days, you had gold-backed notes now replaced by Federal Reserve notes.
Yeah.
That's what was happening within the banks.
Yeah.
And then anybody who held those notes had to come in and exchange them.
And I can't say the words out loud, but in 2020-ish, a thing
March
came out.
to be exact.
A thing came out that had been planned for a very long time, and the thing that was used to resolve it had been produced a long time before.
You're being very vague, but I was just about to say, so that's how all the events that take place in this country are managed
worldwide.
The one that you just mentioned a second ago, that one definitely was global.
That one was so obvious. It's not even funny.
Yeah, but other events, I'm just even talking in the last 25 years, right, from 2000 on, that was very clear. It's just all of those events is the exact same thing of them being planned many, many, many decades ago or years ago and implemented. So I don't know. It's definitely very...
But they're presented, and the media is heavily involved in that PSYOP process to convince everyone this is real and it's a big deal and, it's just happened right now. in order to push to war on terror or whatever else the thing is that they're trying to push this around.
So to help us moving forward, we do need to start paying attention. If we do watch any type of movies, there's always a message on that movie that actually is a message for us to really pay attention to, that may be realistic, coming to a, neighborhood near you type thing. Anyways, in other words, pay attention to the movies. They always give us that message.
They seed,
a message.
Yeah, they seed psychology in order to prepare people for, so that they believe what's coming. If you didn't think it was even possible, it would be less easy to psyop you. But if there's something in there in the subconscious about this could happen, and then it does, you're not as resistant to it. And that would be a real fun study to go back and look at how advertising came about and propaganda, which is advertising, back in the 1920s and so forth. It's really interesting study.
And before.
Oh yeah, it's been going on forever.
Because
but it got very scientific back in about the 1920s is really when it really got scientific and got some really good books written about it.
It actually, I'd say scientific, but it became overtly sinister in the pre-planning of how it was being used to manipulate. And all these things are pre-planned transfer of either money or power or both. And now it's the mind, and now it's the people, transfer of people for the purpose of gaining money and power.
Which as we talk today, 2025, when you start thinking of how they pre-plan and manage these psyops or operations or events, how scary it becomes with now AI being a big part of discussions today, right? How scary it could be for us in the near future with that technology getting into the control of the wrong people, right? Or the people that are in control of all this.
And just being able to produce videos of anything and anybody, and your voice is available if you do anything online. If you're posting Instagram things, your voice is there. AI can reproduce that. Your picture's there. AI can reproduce you. So you really can't believe anything you see or hear. It could be totally fake.
And that it's all psychology, because if you look at the definition of AI, it's all based upon predictive algorithms. That's psychology. It's all been produced, and but in an extremely sophisticated manner right now.
And it's going to be more sophisticated next week, and more sophisticated the next week, and it's just exponential. I think AI or ChatGPT just came out with 5.2.
Did it? I didn't see that.
Yeah, and I was reading today, it's got all the others beat to heck right now. And last week it was Gemini that just came out and beat everybody to heck.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
There's definitely competition, huh?
Oh man, it's just changing so fast you just can't
keep up with it. But they're all eating each other. They're all feeding off of each other, literally being fed to each other to evolve. Yep. You're really the guru in this little group when it comes to AI and
usage,
and
not understanding it, just using it.
The LLMs, the large language models. But wow, this is beyond that.
It's crazy.
And I think to my point there is just the fact that if we were able to be, and I'm talking like I guess the last 100 years really, because I know it was also previous to that, but how they managed to do all of this without us realizing that all of this was taking place, that's where I'm getting to, is now with this technology, it's now going to be even easier for them to to do things, right?
And at the same time, we have the internet where we can all talk to each other as long as they don't turn us off with the algorithms, right? But what's interesting to watch is that, I mean, humans are humans, right? Humans do what humans do, and that is that even though information is available, and we'll get in, this will come into play later on as far as if you can know, you should know. You're responsible to know if you can know, right? And people will ask me all the time in the office about all kinds of stuff, and my answer is, go look it up. I mean, it's all available to you. There's nothing you need to know that you can't find out right now, right?
Why do I get the feeling that also when we sometimes do some telegram communication to you, you're like, here you go. And it's like 5,000 pages to read for one question. Like, okay, I got it. I will do that next myself. Tell me that I read between the sentences really good.
I'm not
there.
saying a thing.
So, and it's always still
Eliza, you know
that
that's what takes place. You know that.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, Ken.
No worries. Okay. So
like I say, but I also appreciate it. So thank you, because you're so good at it. And it is a developed proper question asking is a developed skill. So you get, because especially with AI, but even people, they'll spit back at you what you ask. And it's like, well, you didn't ask that. Yeah. Sometimes it's a response, or it's like, well, you didn't say anything. Well, you didn't ask. And you have to do the same thing with AI or any of your research.
Yeah.
And
Ken exceeds at that. So.
But
it is important.
I can never remember this guy's name, but he's one of the big gurus, the inspirational kind of gurus, like the big, tall guy.
Tony Robbins.
Yeah, Tony Robbins. One of my favorite phrases from him is the quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask. And that's no more clear than with AI, right? You can put something in that's not going to give you the result that you're after, or you can put something in that's very, very clear and succinct and get you exactly what you're after. But if you leave it up to the AI will distort all kinds of things and give you all kinds of incorrect answers, right?
You just gave me an idea.
To a mountaintop.
You just gave me an idea, though. I am no longer going to ask a question. I'm going to send you that 5,000 page summary. Hey, I this is what I asked and this is what I got. What do you think?
And I'll plug it into the AI and say, can you summarize this for me in 3
seconds? Yeah, you'll have the AI talking to each other. Oh boy, our chat's going to blow up.
That's incredible. That's one of the best things to do, though, is to give one AI's answer to another AI and have them evaluate it and summarize it.
Well, isn't that the competition that's taking place, though? Is that the competition that's taking place behind the scenes between the AIs? Are they somehow sharing?
Yeah, they're doing it on
their knowledge, I guess,
on a business standpoint. But I mean, because one AI will, even between ChatGPT agents, they'll do it. I do that every once in a while, where one ChatGPT agent gives me one answer, and I take it and open up a new chat and go, okay, this other agent gave me this. Tell me what's wrong about it, and they'll find stuff
within our chat. Mm-hmm. Because you think of the question of saying, okay, take me to a mountaintop. The genie, take me to a mountaintop, and you went to go to K2, and you end up on top of Mount Everest, and it's like that's not what I meant. Well, it's not what you asked, or you weren't specific enough. And this is really important, because knowing that AI is built with a certain predisposition, a bias, but it's going to be a bias that probably the system wants you to know or to believe or embrace. So as, especially when Ken does work, he has been very good at tailoring the prompt to make sure that their bias is not what is spit back out to him. And you have to be careful, and you have to be very clear.
And you have to be willing to say, hey, I don't buy this part of it. Can you reassess that?
Yeah.
And they'll come back and say, oh, yeah, you're right.
You have to recognize it, though. Like, you have to bring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's really helpful, but you've got to be willing to question it. If you see something that doesn't doesn't jive with what you think is real.
You still have to do your own homework and your own education. You can't just rely on
Right.
AI knowing everything.
Gotcha. And I'm sorry, I actually pushed us away from the slides, so I'm going to bring
That's
it back really quick. I always do that. Sorry about that. On the next slide, I believe we get to the part of it mentioning the HJR 192. Why is that so important?
Eliza, do you want to do that for me, or am I going to have to look that up on ChatGPT? Because that is one that I go back to over and over and over, and I still have to look it up again.
What I got from this, there was a sort of a two-parter. It's like the Emergency Banking Relief Act was when they actually shut. We've discussed it because it was just a pre-planned series of events, right? They all tie into each other. That on March 6th, they actually shut down the banks to reopen on March 9th. And then all of a sudden, this Emergency Banking Relief Act came out with a different backing of the currency. It was a new backing. It's not like the old certificates were not, like I said, the U.S. has never canceled its old certificates. So they're old. Even old silver certificates are still valid. You can still turn them in for whatever. I think the exchange is now in lawful currency, which you'll probably get Federal Reserve notes for them. But this was a part of basically introducing the new type of currency backed by the people and no longer backed by gold. Now, House Joint Resolution, you'll have to refresh me on 192.
This is where there's a lot of contention in the truther world, or the what ChatGPT calls the alternative law world, because HJ 192 eliminated the legal enforceability of gold clauses in contracts and redefined what constitutes legal tender in the U.S. So it
ties right in, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Something to like for me to understand, like people can no longer like demand payment in gold. Is that what you mean, or?
Yeah, basically that gold is no longer the legal tender. This piece of paper is the legal tender.
Okay, debt would satisfy.
Yeah,
in form of legal tender versus the demand in gold.
Right, and the big question is, well, how are you ever going to pay off a debt with another debt? So is it even possible to pay off a debt? Right? You don't have the capability to pay a debt because all you got is other debts to pay that debt with. So everybody's just trading these IOUs back and forth and saying that they've paid the debt with that other IOU, but that doesn't make any sense.
Well, it's if my neighbor gives me an IOU for $20 and I want to go buy something and I say, well, my neighbor gave me an IOU for $20. Here you go. Ultimately, you have to go back to the original neighbor to get your $20, but we can just pass that IOU forever. Mm-hmm. But it was originally not in the case of the IOU. Well, even then, the backing of that original IOU were debt notes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So it restricted our ability to ever discharge to zero a debt. Because all you can do is...
Because of the borrowing from the Federal Reserve always having interest attached.
Exactly. So there's a lot of contention over exactly what that means. And I don't think we're going to resolve that issue tonight. But basically the idea is it's absolutely impossible for you to discharge a debt with paper money.
With dollars that have interest attached to them in the first place using Federal Reserve notes.
Exactly.
Which is completely separate if we were having notes issued by the U.S. Treasury, which they're not. I mean, this is a whole nother discussion. But the point is we have Federal Reserve notes here.
Right. And then there's other things we could get into, but we won't tonight. But how it may be possible to discharge a debt truly. but not with Federal Reserve notes. That would be impossible.
Yeah.
That's a whole other conversation that we'll get into some other time.
It's actually very fun, by the way, once you learn.
Yes, it is. I agree.
Light
All right.
at the end of the tunnel.
That's right.
Yes.
All right, I'm going down to the next one here. So, effectively, what we're saying is that there's no longer collateral directly supporting the money supply. Collateral in the form of an asset like gold or silver, but there has to be some collateral supporting those debt notes, right? Because if a bank's going to loan you money, they're going to require some kind of collateral from it. Well, that's where we come in. The ability for the government to tax our labor and for our labor to create a consumer country, which is we are the consumer country that supports the entire world because we're really good at consuming. And so we and our labor and our taxes are the support that gives assurance to other countries that our money has value. Or not really that it has value, but that it has some backing to it as collateral. So in other words, we're the collateral for the money now. So when they say it's backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S., well, it's the full labor of you and me.
That's that surety thing that this sentence that we tacitly, again, quietly in the background and voluntarily, we agree voluntarily. It's hidden to be bonded sureties, basically, to stand as the promise behind the currency to the bankrupt franchise. So that we hear this term, all taxes are voluntary. We do volunteer. We're tricked into volunteering, but it's not so. It's a process and a learning journey to unvolunteer. It's not just something it's not a noisy one. It's not a belligerent one, but it does take learning, and
Now,
it is a process to do it properly.
Now, Eliza, so you're mentioning that we're volunteering, right? And I know we've touched on this on previous episodes, but I think we're on it. Let's talk about it a little bit more. How? How are we the people volunteering to become sureties for the debt? How? Some examples, even though we've touched on it before.
Yeah. Well, number one, we sign up to be that surety, that taxpayer. We sign up to be the backing of the currency by getting a social security number. They need a tracking mechanism, and they have to. Then we are also encouraged. Well, I won't say tricked. Okay, I'll say tricked. We're tricked into it's called joinder. We're tricked into thinking that we are the same as this social security 9-digit person, which is a thing. It's a thing. It's what can be held to account to back the currency. So there's a lot of learning to do there, but there's a lot of ways that we are volunteering to be bound to hold this obligation. But the great thing, light at the end of the tunnel, that in this learning, we can roll that back in a lot of ways, and then operate independently of that in a way that we are actually directing the traffic.
So would you say that the idea is that as we interact daily, right? Every interaction that we do on a daily basis is us consenting to be the backing for the system, such as interactions, right? Like, so registering when we have a baby, or signing any type of contract, or applying for benefits, or applying for a DL, driver's license, passport, and so forth. Are those
anywhere you have used that 9-digit social number, saying that it is you, so you're bound to it. Your body and your work is bound to it, but we call it their person. Anywhere you are using that, The BC is one thing, but that is basically the tracking mechanism that has led up to them then also forming the SSN number. And in the U.S., it's the SSN number. It's like, 209 countries are using the same, have copied the same system. Okay, so yes. Now, there are ways that you are not acting within that system. You're not utilizing the social. In other words, you're not using the bank account. You may be using, say, gold or silver, or even cash, which is kind of a quasi within the system, but you're not binding your social to it. There are ways that you can operate in a different jurisdiction. I'm going to use that word, and that's a big word we can discuss at some other time. But we can operate in a, free from that person's system. Probably not saying it in the way I want to, because it's a big topic. But
Pretty much.
anywhere, yeah, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, pretty much anytime you do commerce, the first thing they're going to ask for is your social security number. Right? So if you go get a W-2 job, you're not getting that job without giving them your social security number.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to open a bank account, you're not going to, or try to get a credit card, you're going to have to give them your social security number. And you think that's your identity, right? Because that's what it sounds like, right? But it's not. It's your tracking number is what it is. It's the tracking number for the person that was established by that. And last week we talked a lot about person. I think it was last week, wasn't it? So if people are not familiar with that person concept, and you're thinking a person is a flesh and blood person like you grew up thinking, as opposed to the legal context of a person, which is not that same thing, what I just said won't make any sense to you. So you need to go back and listen to last week's and really get clear on what a person is from a legal standpoint. Your person.
That concept was probably one of my biggest light bulb moments. That I had separation from that, and the options for that came later.
Yeah. I kicked back against that for quite a while until I finally understood that really is the legal definition of person. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Go to the next one. So now this one's fun. So let's go back to this one to get the word ignorant. Wasn't it on the prior one? Hang on. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. What is the point of these maxims on this next slide that you mentioned? Because that word ignorant, right?
Yeah. So
kind of offensive in a way, but
we ignorantly but voluntarily get ourselves into this mess. Is basically what it comes down to. Okay? Mm-hmm. So ignorantly, that's not to say you're stupid. It means more just not to know, right? Like ignoring something. You're ignoring it. You're not paying attention to it. When we say ignorantly, we're basing that on two maxims of law. Ignorance of the law does not excuse, and to be bound to know or to be able to know is the same as to know. So if you go into court and you don't know what the law is, that's your problem. The court is not required to inform you about the law. You're already supposed to know it because it's available to you.
It's publicly available.
Yeah, you could go study it, and there's law libraries, and again nowadays, the internet's available to everybody. There's virtually no information that you can't get really, really quickly. But most people will not do it, and they'll rely on their ignorance, and that's not stupidity, it's just unknowingness.
And this seems so unfair. If you look at, if you're new to this, you want to say, how dare they? Because I couldn't have known this. My parents couldn't have known. My grandparents couldn't have known. Okay?
But they could have.
They just
didn't.
Right, didn't. And it was harder then. But you step out of this piece, especially when we're going to be talking equity and how we can operate responsibly, that you step out of a victim mentality.
Yes.
Like you have to say, look, I could do this. And yes, I did do that. Yeah, I was tricked. It still doesn't mean I I need to go forward and take responsibility that I did it.
It's
And
radical.
that's very freeing, but you got to get there.
Radical personal responsibility. That everything is my fault because I'm responsible for everything. So I can't put the fault of not knowing onto anyone because I have the responsibility to inquire and to search out. And if I don't, it's my fault.
Okay, so then we're presumed to know the law because it's publicly available. Therefore, would ignorance equate to consent? Is that what is pretty much being said?
Well, yeah, we tend to consent because we're ignorant. Right? So we think that we got tricked into something, but we didn't. We just weren't aware of it. But it's our fault we weren't aware of it.
Can I make a point though? We weren't a lot of it. We weren't aware of it because it was hidden from us. But yes, it is available. But it was hidden from us. To be honest,
it was absolutely. But
Yeah.
we have the responsibility to inquire.
To inquire.
So what most people do is they get angry when they start understanding this, right? And they say they tricked me. Well, that doesn't do you any good because you have the responsibility to inquire.
Go forward. That was a Tony Robbins thing.
Was it?
He actually says use any type of stress or strife to, instead of letting it mire you down, use it to compel you forward.
Absolutely.
In other words, if them there's fighting words, well then get feisty and get to know it, because there is a lot of it's called, obfuscation. That's a word. It's one of my favorite words, but I think it's overused these days. But if you look into the legal language, it's its own. It's its own language, and that's one way that we do get tricked.
And
We'll call it tricked, is because you've got to learn to do the research to comprehend what your responsibilities are, and that's okay.
The system assumes that you're going to be ignorant. Right? That's why you need an attorney to represent you, because you're stupid and you can't possibly know anything about the law. So you need to hire this guy over here to do it for you because he studied all that. Well, he's not really on your side most of the time. So you can do it, but it takes work.
Yeah, because you're not stupid. And it is your responsibility. It doesn't matter. It's your responsibility. And even if things were done for you when you were younger and not of age, they're done on your behalf. When you become of age, say 18, 21, depending your state, you have to pick the ball up and clean up the mess and find out how you're supposed to go forward. Because at that point, it is your responsibility. Everything done in the past and everything going forward.
Now, Ken, you shared a story with us of a gentleman being in the courtroom, and the judge, the gentleman had a cell phone with him, and the judge pretty much used that again. I guess you can say against him.
Well, the guy basically said, "But I didn't know, Judge, that this was a problem with the law, right?" And the judge said, "Well, do you have a cell phone?" And the guy said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, all knowledge in the entire world is right in your hand. So you didn't know, but you could have known." And that's really the way it's looked at. So responsibility time. We have the responsibility to inquire.
So get the feisty out of your system. Go have your cry. Go scream no fair. And then realize that either it was done on your behalf before you were of age and now you are, or you've basically created the mess yourself, not knowing. Obviously, no one would ever do this to themselves purposely. Well, no one that I know. But, that and go forward. Use that energy to go forward.
But don't try to run out and represent yourself in court just because you looked a couple things up. You need to do a little more than that.
Yeah, the patriot mythology, those types of, there's a lot of stuff out there trying to either capture your resources or misdirect you. I think that's what you're referring to, Ken.
Yeah, absolutely. So this emphasizes that in legal context, the responsibility to know or the capability to acquire knowledge is treated equivalently to actually having that knowledge. So you're assumed to know. All of the legal codes and statutes are written and placed in public records, available in public libraries, law libraries, and on the internet to anyone willing to put forth the effort to know. Or you can pay an attorney and have them turn on you, basically.
Well, I'm working towards self-present, if that's the right wording, self-presenting versus hiring an attorney for anything. But I do want to close on this on my end for at least what we've said in these last few minutes. Because some of these words, right, personally, I am not stupid. I am not you are drinking coffee. I am not ignorant. Initially, when I started on this path, I was angry, right? But it's gone to the point, and there's a lot to learn. I've only been at this for a couple years. It's becoming fun to learn how to play their game. And I've said it in the past on previous episodes. My goal is to get really, really, really good at this game. Competition has been the name of my game forever. I love sports. I've always loved competition. So it's been fun playing their game. I've learned a ton of new things, and I plan on continuing to have fun, but really getting good at this game. And that's my ultimate goal. And then sharing it, of course, with my immediate family and having them apply it as well. So it's been fun today, guys.
Cool.
I loved it.
That's a good one. You have any last words, Eliza?
I think this whole learning exercise today has been the history, how these flips and processes have been pre-planned and have occurred to get us to where we're at. But in ending at this, the whole point that it's our mess, inherited or not, and that it is our responsibility to go forward. And there is such great light at the end of the tunnel that we do not have to be standing in our own mess. And there's something much better of how we can actually dictate how we operate in their system in our own lives. I'm juiced about that.
Awesome.
Cool.
Love it.
All right. That's all the fun we can have.
What about you, Ken?
Come on, Ken.
It's all good, man.
Cough up.
I just have to say, I'm not stupid either, but I am ignorant of many things.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Aren't we all?
This is great.
Hoping to
Yes,
become
it has been.
less ignorant day by day.
Yes, please.
Yes, said it best
Okay.
there, Ken.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Have a great night.
Much
Bye-bye.
love. See
Bye-bye.
you next week. Ready? Bye-bye.
Bye.
The views expressed in this Liberty Ark podcast are for informational and educational purposes only. They do not constitute legal or tax advice, and they may not reflect the official positions of anyone at all, really. We want to express our appreciation to the authors of the unpublished manuscript titled The Great International Heist, on which the Liberty Ark podcast is based. Rebecca and Jonathan Rodriguez, the authors, provide courses that go into much greater depth and are available at libertyarkpodcast.com/white rabbit.